Hello everyone, welcome to Helicon West. Hello, my name is Woody. Thank you all for coming. Helicon West is an uncensored public reading series. We host published authors and community writers to showcase all levels of skill and craft. We welcome open mic readers. We welcome donations to keep Helicon West going. You will find a sign-up sheet for the open mic and bookmarks with a QR code link for donations at the coffee station in the back. Help yourself to some Cafe Ibis decaf while you're signing up or donating, and be sure to use a lid for your coffee to prevent accidental spills. Helicon West humbly acknowledges that we are here on the territory of the northwestern band of the Shoshone Nation. We are grateful for our sponsors and partners, Sugar House Review, the Logan Library, the USU English Department, Cafe Ibis, and many community volunteers. For information, interviews, and more, please visit heliconwest.wordpress.com. We are currently pushing to revive the blog and have a bunch of different interviews and a bunch of different things going on up there. So a lot of our regular readers who come every time have a lot of their stuff up there now, and you should definitely check it out because they're talented people. But without further ado, we'll get to the main event. We are blessed to have two featured readers this evening, Phillip Brown and Patrick Ramsay. Phillip received his MFA in poetry from Oregon State University after earning a BA in graphic design with a minor in English from BYU. He is the author of Boy with Flowers in His Mouth, winner of the 2023 Gold Line Press Poetry Chapbook Contest. His work can also be found in various other places, including Ninth Letter, The Common, Ruminate, Spillway, Tahoma Literary Review, Comus, Grist, and Longleaf Review. In addition to nominations for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net, his poems have also been finalists for the Horizon Anthology Award and Palette Poetry's Brush and Lyre Prize. He has also served as a poetry editor for the journal Halfway Down the Stairs since May 2021. Our second reader is Patrick Ramsay, and they are a queer Utah-based poet who was raised in and along the wetlands of the Great Salt Lake. He earned his BA in English and Creative Writing at Weber State University, where he served as editor-in-chief of Metaphor Literary Journal. His poems focus on land, heart, and community in the West, and they have appeared in Guarlingo, Halifite Magazine, LQ Magazine, Q Salt Lake, The Signpost, Sink Hollow, The Standard Examiner, and more. You can find more of Patrick's work in his debut poetry chapbook, Butterflies Are Rare in Beehives, or on Instagram at WritePatrick. Please give a warm Helicon Welcome West to Phillip Brown.
Hello, I'm very excited to be here. I read at Helicon West open mics when I lived up here in Logan, and my husband and I live in Ogden now. We've been there for almost 4 years, and so it's a fun return to be back here. I wanted to read first the title poem in my collection, Boy with Flowers in His Mouth. This collection deals with, some of the themes are with sexuality and religion, the complications of growing up gay in a Mormon context. There's also obviously flowers and a lot of garden imagery. So this first poem is titled, Boy with Flowers in His Mouth. Everyone can tell he's a boy who blooms. Can't talk without petals falling, soft evidence against him. He bites down on stems, keeping quiet, the taste both bitter and floral, a terrible summer. Shame unfurls in the silence, his body a greenhouse flush with desire. A dozen questions blossom on his tongue. No one will explain this. No one will name the flowers. I was reflecting on the silences that often accompany queerness, especially in adolescence. It was, thankfully, I didn't experience like a ton of direct bullying or harsh things said to me, but there was so much like not talking about it. No one was explaining anything, no one was helping me, no one was asking me questions, and so this poem kind of reflects on that, and also a self-consciousness about my voice as a thing that would out me. And so I think with some of these poems, they are an attempt to kind of speak to my younger self, to offer reassurance, and to connect with kind of how I was feeling back then, but with my perspective now. This next poem is in a similar vein, talking about those conflicts. And actually, I wanted to give a little Helicon West shout out because I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that this was a poem that I read at my very first Helicon West. And I came and I read 2 or 3 poems, and one of the featured readers was the editor-in-chief of Psaltery and Lyre, and said, "Oh, you should submit these." And so I submitted them, and this one was published. And that was really kind of kicking off a lot of my publications that now it's like it's in a little book, it's all official, but I wanted to bring it back to where it started. It's titled Beehive State. Press your ear to any chapel, members hymn, trembling in the spirit, vocal cords and the organ vibrating the walls. Street lamps outside, too, buzz with light, and the steeples cast long shadows. One points toward my childhood home. I tightrope along its blue edge, end up where I started. Wind stirs backyard aspens into a swarm. Fireworks bloom overhead. Smoke drifts westward like saints seeking Zion, a rose in the desert. This faith is a dark handcart to pull. The embered valley flickers with cars. I watch their frenzy from the back porch, a cold drink sweating in my hand. The AC shuts off. Crickets shush the silence. Stillness lifts a loaded frame from the box hive of my heart, heavy with everything unsaid, questions kept in hexagon closets. Do I leave the apiary, shed the protective suit, gloves, and veil, make another life? Blood thrums through my veins, honeyed with desire. My prayers have reached a fever pitch. How will this end? I stand on the top porch step, arms stretched out like a cross, like in a dream I had, terrified to move, to even breathe, my tender body clothed in bees. It's not always true that everything in a poem is like from my real life or whatever, but that was a real dream I did have. And when I woke up, I thought, oh my, that's a loaded image. I need to use that. This next poem is called Metamorphosis, and it's kind of, I would say, a third in this series of this kind of exploring adolescence and what this means. Like many poets, I was completely fascinated by butterflies and the transformation that they make, and was thinking about transformations of my own. Metamorphosis. I'd heard the allegory of the butterfly, how he begins soft-bodied and green, thumbing along a milkweed leaf. How he fashions a glass house to change in, like the superhero ducking into a phone booth, emerging as something else entirely. It can take weeks. For some creatures, years. I self-diagnosed in the library, leafing shyly through books on sex and adolescence, a figure drawing guide with nudes. Yes, they all agreed. I was a man, or would be, but none explained what that meant. At swimming pools and campfires, I watched older boys joke, wrestle, dare each other in a language they all knew. Like a tourist, picking up phrases, I was too nervous to try them, worried my accent might show. I mastered camouflage, blending back into the silence. Once I skipped the troop meeting where we'd master tying knots, climbed instead into the arms of a pine tree behind the church. I hid there a while, imagining how it might feel to have wings, if I'd like it, as if it were something I could choose. The book is called Boy with Flowers in His Mouth, and there are 3 poems that start each of the 3 sections that are boy with, so there's Boy with Flowers, Boy with Scissors and a Map, and I'm going to skip ahead to the 3rd one, which is Boy with Orange. As he peels, the bright fruit shifts, sun to moon, which soon will wane to a single wedge of light. The boy, his own planet, orbits the afternoon in dizzy loops, sweet citrus of another boy's kiss stinging his lip. Physics says a pull exists between bodies, sun and earth, earth and moon, or 2 boys close enough the tides inside them rise like a hand to a fruit-bearing branch, like a tongue to ripe translucence. Though Newton's law doesn't tell what happens after, how a boy should live, which world to circle. This next poem is one of those where I think it's interesting as a poet. Certain things will just spark inspiration, and then I've occasionally tried to research and find that the inspiration is either not accurate, or in this case, I just couldn't find it. It was what someone else had told me, and I thought, it doesn't matter, it's still interesting, right? But this was about these churches. I think this was in Italy, and that they had all of these murals on them, and the story that I was told was that they got whitewashed in order to have them be hospitals during the World Wars. But I also know that there were other times where Puritans were very uninterested in the Catholic imagery, and so they covered up all these things. And then, of course, we've seen now where they'll try and restore it, and sometimes it's really damaged and kind of hard to get back to its original glory. And so I was thinking about that with myself. So this poem is called Restoration. Such delicate work to restore my 4-chapel heart, to undress the bright murals I painted over like a Puritan. I hid every image of earthliness, my green desires, the red fruit. I prayed, take this thorn from my flesh, but the wound has bloomed instead, a wild rose between my ribs, stigmata of all sensitive sons. This is true repentance, to undo piety, to lift the veil and look. I puzzle over fragments, so much damaged and lost. A stag with no crown, a lake half erased, whole swaths of absence like fog through the garden. I find a boy I brushed away, touch the outline of his body, barely there in places, like a memory, a dream eroded by daylight. His outstretched arms are gone. He can't stop reaching. He can't hold anyone. Okay, I have 2 to finish, and both of these are poems that are more reflective of my self now that I'm out and an adult and I'm married. So I think marriage is a really fascinating relationship, and this person that you are so close to is also someone who is still a whole other person, and You're each your own self. And I was thinking about that. I often feel I'm an introvert, and I feel like sometimes my inner world is spacious. So I was thinking about how I feel sometimes like almost a building or a house. And then I was thinking about that with my husband. So this poem is called Neighbors. Neighbors. My husband and I are houses. Neighbors when we lie down at night, pillows like snow-filled yards. Even if we touch walls, kiss one windowsill to another, still there is glass and brick between us. I study the architecture of their face as they dream, blinds drawn, memories on like evening news. Childhood scenes, today replayed, I can't tell from here. This is how we live in marriage. Wandering alone the blue dawn, I lock and unlock doors, some I've never opened to anyone, closets cluttered with darkness. What are you thinking about? They ask, now awake. I glance up from my pile of loose thoughts, fold a few away before I answer, the way people straighten a room before letting someone in. And this last poem was when my husband and I went to California for one of their friends' weddings, and we were living in Oregon at the time, so we were driving back up to Oregon. We had gotten a very early start. I think starting early is like leaving at, 6:30. My husband thinks starting early is leaving at like 4:30. So we were driving through a little bit of the dark, but then the sunlight starts coming up, and it's just really magical. And we were driving through an area that was just so pretty, and I was looking out the window and saw all of these things. So this is a description of that. California, driving home after a wedding. The first seconds of sunrise brush gold across endless rows of almond trees. Grain silos burn white against dark fields, like the candles last night in the church. I daydream, watching a murmuration of birds turn overhead like a restless sleeper, my own bones longing to wake into a shape that spacious, a net large enough to catch the whole sky. Signs on the roadside keep saying soft shoulder, like a kind of instruction. To shed armor, our tender selves underneath, naked and shy. A new husband contemplating his husband in the early light. To lift our bodies into the air, drifting together and apart like that cloud of starlings. Edges impossible to sketch. One sinuous flight, 1,000 different wings. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. That was really beautiful. Personally, just a quick comment because I can't help myself. I think it's just really interesting how a lot of writers use natural imagery to kind of show our separation from it in the world. And you did a really interesting job of having the exact opposite effect. And it was really just powerful to see the poetic depiction of you as part of the natural world. It's just really beautiful. I love that a lot. But with that, we will please welcome Pastor Ramsay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My work is quite queer. I'm pretty obsessed with living in the West and all the things that means with getting outside and what that means for being a queer person and going outside. So the work I'll share today focuses a lot on that. This is titled Nymph. Sometimes on the river, I imagine taking home the mustached fishermen Two of us hauling in dinner, laughing at slip-haps, waiters up to our hearts, and a river rushing through our legs. But truth is, we are still endangered species in rural places. Fishermen, fishing men. But still, I think about the man from Montana on the tailgate of his 90s Toyota pickup, dry and triumphant, gave me his number in the roadside gravel while I wrung water from my socks. He talked about beginner's luck, while I talked about the art of untangling from willow boughs. I could teach you, he promised. I could show you everything I know. Wonder if he's still in town, still has the mustache. In another life, I'll come back to that river bend as a rainbow trout, searching for his barbless hook, just to feel his hands. This poem came from COVID, when everyone was packing their life into a vehicle and heading to the nearest national park. I went to Yellowstone with a dude I met on an app and dated briefly. Portrait as Sagittarius A. It is true that when I see the floating spark of a satellite in orbit, I still think of the whirling spirals of the astronomer's beard, how it would swallow my whole hand when I held his cheek. Can still feel backpacking Yellowstone in my shoulder blades, the crisp, skinny-dip sunset in hell-roaring creek, him stargazing in grizzly country, alone outside our nylon tent, quietly narrating meteors, the constellations of our bodies overlapping after nightfall. As we drove through the Tetons, I taught him to fish, while he taught me star clusters with binoculars. He assured me through campfire smoke that we know almost nothing about black holes, except that they resemble burning irises and an open mouth with soft lips. Has anyone here ever turned 30? It's interesting, especially as like a gay man. It's like there's this thing called like twink death, where like you're no longer like young and spry, but then you get to grow a mustache and you're considered something different in the community. I wrote this before I turned 30. It's titled Before 30. I streak through a golf course in nectarine light and self-destruct a little bit. Not in a salamander letter type of way, but like an old truck whose engine blows right after the warranty is up. I cancel the party, detonate my relationship, call in sick, call my old therapist with the tattoos, ask him if he's still engaged, send up a flare. Can't believe it's taken me this long to realize the word hello and help are one autocorrect away from twinhood. I kiss everyone. Kiss goodbye to my savings account, greet 1,000 new hobbies with the fervor of a young dog, tongue out. I only have so much time left to be reckless in my 20s. I was 28 the first time a twink told me he loves older guys. This is why all the queens call 30 gay death. I feel too young, too childless, too cut loose to be someone's daddy. But maybe he was right. My mortgage, the chicken coop, the poodle nut rescue dog. I used to be stupid. Gloriously, aimlessly stupid. But at some point along the way, a bungalow, a career, a real live with me, go to weddings and farmers markets together partner. Someone must have tricked me. Tricked me into learning what a 401k is, what a deductible is, how to become interested in interest rates. I'm going to be sick and grown up forever. And 30 is a perfectly fine age. It's the death of the I did this in my 20s thing that I'm mourning. Who damned me to grow up this fast? To man before I was really done boying. This is the part where I'm supposed to assure you that a job can be a dream, and mowing your own lawn, also a dream. But gut laughs, mushroom trips, occasional sex with strangers, also a dream. I know, that growing older grows on you, but youth is a temporary meadow, with soft scruff And I guess this is a long way of saying, I'm afraid of losing something I didn't know was worth anything. Anyway, call me when you get this. Need to borrow your drill again. I appreciated that this was called an uncensored reading, and with that, I took liberties. This is just titled Work Trip. I scroll into another man's body and unfurl like a balcony fern. A meteorologist in LA confirms 2 mouths can make a storm if the tongues are warm and short on time. He says every body has a climate. Mine opens like a basin every time I check into a hotel on business. I unzip who I was on the reservation, shed my email signature, try on a new name, new kinks, shower, step out wet and new and unknown to myself in the vanity light. Can't imagine how anyone gets any work done on business trips when the hotel mirrors and crisp white sheets paint us all like porn stars. And I'll admit, it does feel good to submit my expenses for the taste of sweet sweat in a new city, to charge as valet to my room and tell accounting there must have been some mistake. That is not for my current job. It's at an earlier stage of my career. Okay, I support gay rights. I also support gay wrongs. This is about my gay wrongs. This is titled Cable Mountain Lodge. It's a working title. I can't remember what I actually titled it in my manuscript. This collection of poems that I'm reading from, these just like loose papers, this manuscript was accepted as like a full-length book with Torrey House Press. It'll come out in June of 2027. So pardon the loose leaves. Thank you. I'm pretty stoked. But yeah, that traditional publishing timeline is quite a ways out. But this is in that, and I can't remember what I titled it, but working title, Cable Mountain Lodge. The Red Rock monuments form a jagged bowl. The hotel sits in the middle of that bowl. A green river passes by like a loose thread. I would like to blame the bartender, a man I hadn't seen since we were kids. I would like to blame the brewery for making beer you can't find anywhere else. I would like to blame the presence of too many poets, too many poems, too much turquoise sky, too much want in my chest to stay inside just my own chest. But truth is, I'm the one who invited the cowboy to my hotel room. I'm the one who opened the door. I think a lot about the end of the world, and in that lens, it feels so monumental, and I like to write through that about tiny things. If the world is ending, I'll be in the backyard, collecting eggs from the coop, smelling and then showering the rage red strawberries, almost ripe enough to eat. I'll be dipping my knees into the soil while I tug up weeds. This is purer than prayer. If the world is ending, come around back. The gate is open. The lavender is shaking its small, fragrant fists by the thousands. The honey locust tree is pulsing electric with a riot of bees. The air is thick with early summer and bloom. It's quiet enough. And hey, the copper black hen just laid her first egg, the color of Mars and tiger's eye. It's yours if you want it. In the same vein of chicken poems, does anyone suffer from seasonal affective disorder? Like me? Like it's so dark outside, it's like 7:30. This is about that. Breakfast recipe for seasonal affective disorder. At some point in keeping chickens, you learn that hens require 12 to 16 hours of sunlight each day to lay eggs. Yesterday, the winter solstice, we got just 9 hours of sun. These days are the shortest of the year, impossibly short, immediately dark. And yet, yesterday, for no good reason, the hen who hunted sunbathing spots on the back porch all summer long lays her perfect bourbon egg. On the shortest morning of the shortest day, I palm what must be the newest egg on earth. I cook it sunny side up with fresh ground pepper. I eat it with the very last croissant. The yolk drips a good golden mess, and a small pool of August sun takes shape on my plate. Yeah, eggs will save us. This poem is titled, I'd Rather Be Influenced. To send more postcards, to kiss with more tongue and let cantaloupe juice run all the way down to my elbows. I'd rather be influenced to cook more quiche and make cold brew at home, to wake up early and stay in bed, to be better at remembering my friends' birthdays, to vote early. I want an algorithm that worships heirloom tomatoes, the sound of that one summer cricket outside my window, peach sorbet with tiny spoons, the way the mountains go copper at dusk, the chatter of your dog laughing in a dream across the room. And I kind of made up the peach sorbet thing too. Afterwards, it just felt right in the poem, but afterwards I tried to find peach sorbet and I was like, wait, this doesn't exist. Okay, this poem is about my dad. This poem kind of marked the beginning of this collection almost. It was a poem that I was really proud of because it captured him. After patting the hood, my dad trumpets that his old green truck just hit 400,000 miles. But what he means is that empathy is the muscle of longevity. That no regular truck could have driven to the moon and halfway home by now on dumb luck. He assures me that maintenance is the only lost language I already know. That this relic of Japanese horsepower survives on purpose. This mechanical bonsai pruned under garage light and quiet cursing is living proof of what good work can do. He reminds me that building something takes guts, but rebuilding something, that's about heart. What he's really saying with a careful eye fixed to the number on the dashboard is that anyone can invent an heirloom, as long as they care long enough. Okay, I have two more. Is that okay on time? Cool. I also think about other universes a lot. If you ever feel stuck writing a poem, just start one with in another universe, something else happened. I've written a lot of poems that way, and this poem is one of those. In another universe, we end the year at 6 p.m., and it is not a holiday. We don't end it with a bang, we end it with a whisper. An easy Irish goodbye. A one-pan dinner with plenty left over. A sun-filled walk until the dog points toward home. I'm ready for a new year that feels more like a broken-in year. A smoothed leather year. A smells like I've been here before year. In another universe, I trade the new year for a good hair day. A salmon-hued parking lot sunset. A warm hand on the back of my neck. Steam on the kitchen windows. Egyptian licorice tea on the nightstand. In another universe, the new year feels more like a fireplace than a firework. More like a familiar lover than a strange new face. And this is a poem that I like to share with poets. We all have our own version of an Ars Poetica. This is kind of mine. How to write a poem. Start with the name of the country your grandmother fled, Latvia. The closer you get to war, the harder it is to ignore the birth of a poem. Name 3 blue things: Bear River, cornflower, your mother's favorite color. Define the last time you cried with 2 words: dog eclipse. Talk about a regional bird. Utah's state bird is the California gull, but no one wants to talk about that at a dinner party. Did you know a flamingo named Pink Floyd escaped the Tracy Aviary in 1988 and lived happily along the edges of the Great Salt Lake? Somehow, he evaded the regular wing clipping that kept the flamingos grounded. This is the poem. When a ranger first spotted the flamingo, he was called crazy. They asked, "Is there an elephant with him?" Yes, this is indeed the beating wing of the poem. Bird keepers thought about capturing him, but no bait could sway him from the bounty of brine shrimp. Somehow, this high-altitude terminal lake was perfect for Floyd. This is your responsibility as the poet. Recognize when your wings aren't clipped. Heave yourself into the open sky. Find sustenance. Gorge. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was wonderful as well. Super entertaining stuff. What great featured readers. Let's give them another round. And with that, we'll move on to the open mic section of the program. Our first three readers are Jan, Star, and Ron. Oh, and the sign-up sheet will be over here on the table if you want to use it.
Hello.
Hey, Jen.
Sorry.
You couldn't have taped that yet.
Sorry about that. I thought I turned that down. Well, I'm done. So this one is called Personas. Over the years, I feel like I've taken on many personas. As a kid, I was the funny one, always telling jokes or doing things to get attention. Being the third child in the family, and the least favorite, I was starved for attention. I remember a time at a cocktail party my parents were giving. I was around 8 years old, and I got to stay up late helping to fix drinks. I made a mean martini. My mom discovered me holding court in a far corner of the living room. I was surrounded by about 6 adults who were uproariously laughing, some with hands over their shocked mouths. I was entertaining these folks with jokes I'd overheard, most of them quite filthy. I didn't know what the jokes meant, nor did I understand them. I only knew that people laughed when I told them. My mom sent me to bed. Later in my youth, I discovered that I could be a goody-goody. I made good grades in school, and teachers liked me as I was eager to help them with after-school chores. I was the suck-up. Then puberty hit, and I liked boys a lot, and they seemed to like me. I was very happy playing the field and enjoying the awakening of my sexuality. I was the popular girl. When I was 17 years old, my world fell apart. I think I must have played the victim for a while. This was not a good persona, and led to me getting married way too young. Thus, I became the wife. I was a good wife, and I liked my role. My husband and I both worked, and we had a good income, so we played. We traveled, we partied, we enjoyed our youth, our love, and our enthusiasm for life. And then we had kids. I became the mother. I liked being a mother. It took a while for me to get pregnant, so I really appreciated it when it happened. First one daughter, and then 4 years later, another daughter. But my husband did not like me as a mother. He started having affairs, and then he blew through all of our savings. I had to get out from under that hellhole with the kids. I started a new life and became the warrior. I moved across the country with the kids, got a job, and went back to school to finish my degree. This actually took many years, as I could only take one class at a time, but I persisted. Meanwhile, As a single mom, my kids and I became very close, and we had a good relationship. We didn't have money, but we made the most of it. I found all the places in town that offered free kids' meals, and we took advantage of that. We didn't go on vacations. My kids didn't get to take dance lessons or music classes, but I made sure we had fun. One thing we did at least once a week was walk to town and explore downtown Logan. It was a short 4-block walk, and I insisted we do it no matter the weather. One of my favorite moments in my life is when my daughters, once grown, expressed to me how much they appreciated all I did for them, especially those walks to town. Funny, I just remember a lot of complaining on their end. Then in a short period of time, a lot happened to me. I finished my degree, I remarried, and I got a big promotion at work. I became complacent. This was a big mistake. I coasted. I let my guard down. Before I knew it, my daughters had grown up and left home for college, and my second husband started having affairs. Also at this time, I got my first major cancer diagnosis. My husband left. I recovered from my cancer surgery, but I became bitter. Sure, my grown daughters rallied around me, but I was 59 years old, suddenly alone, and worried about my financial security. A lot of the friends in my social circle dropped me, and I needed to start over again. Did I have it in me to call up my warrior genes? Fast forward to the present. It has been 11 years since my second divorce. Initially, I struggled financially being a single breadwinner, but I managed to get my finances on track after selling some stocks and making investments that were not stolen out from under me. I had ups and downs socially, and pretty much had to make new friends and develop new social situations. I had to go through another cancer diagnosis, this one more severe, and I retired after a 36-year stint at Utah State University. So what am I now? Alone, still a mother, still bitter, still searching for acceptance and attention, still a victim, not the popular girl, not the suck-up, not the funny one, not the wife, never complacent. I am a survivor.
That was my friend Jan. I like the persona of the 8-year-old bartender. It just seems like you. And Phillip and Patrick, oh, I've been so excited for this night, and I'm all filled up. So, and Andreas, it's nice to see you again. Phillip, boy with flowers, blooms, stems, the blue edge, honeyed, fevered, clothed in bees. Oh. And Patrick, the art of untangling from willow boughs, the narrator of meteors, the temporary meadow of youth, the climate of body, the river, a loose thread, too much want, more pure than prayer. Oh, you too. You're great. So I am a poet. I used to write poems, and now I write prose poem memoirs. And this one is called True. The Bear River. I should have learned to swim when I was a child, should have learned how to save myself in risky situations. But I was afraid of the water, so I tested the edges, waded the shallows, faked bravery when floating with my siblings on inner tubes we brought home from the service station in town. To keep up, I paddled with my hands, got a rash in my arms from rubbing against the tube. To keep floating, to keep moving out to the deep, to avoid desk-sized boulders, to not get overturned or shoved underwater or trapped under rapids. When I was 24, I missed the high water mark over the flume of rocks beneath the siphon bridge, felt my tailbone crack, hung on to my tube as it dumped me, plunged into cold, white forests of water. Popped up with my tube, gasping for air, gasping with the pain of smashing into a 2-ton boulder. I yelled, "Shit! Shit! Shit!" My sister Manon, 20 years older than I, Mormony and proper, had come to watch us ride the river. I saw her there on the bank as I struggled back onto my tube, as I shivered, embarrassed by my panic. Kicked myself for swearing as I paddled to catch up. After we pulled in from floating to have lunch at the family park on the river, we laughed about my dunking, but I couldn't sit down at the picnic table. I couldn't sit down for about 3 years after that. Wasn't like me to sit much anyway. I waitressed and took care of the kids, took care of a house and a wayward husband, my husband. I should have told someone how it was with him. Instead, I paddled along in the bed I'd made when I married him at barely 17. He cheated and he drank and he gambled, and I tried to keep out of his way, tried not to get dumped. My family didn't know because I was embarrassed, because I pretended, because I said good things about him or I didn't say anything at all. Because at first I didn't believe he was cheating on me, even when I found evidence as hard to avoid as boulders in rapids. I made it easy for him to lie when I left. He told our neighbors I was cheating on him, and they believed him. Even my grown children believed him at first. But in the end, they couldn't reconcile what he said about me with what they knew about me. My children were not blind to my sorrow. As much as I tried to keep it from them, to make excuses for him, they could not ignore his silent treatments, his stony face, the bruises I tried to cover up. I would say, "He's tired. He works too hard. He can't help it." I made sure my children took swimming lessons. I took them tubing down the river, taught them how to watch for currents that can dunk and pummel them. They respect the weight of water, its ability to hold them down.
Hi.
Hi, Logan.
You're on. This is when we go Dewey Decimal System. The zeros are the Java words, with mysteries and facts. The 100s are the big P words, with P sound, each word lacks. The 2 plus are on religion, mythology too. The 3 hands on holidays, fairy tales, and maths you can do. The 4 hands on dictionaries, and the way that we talk. The 5 hands on scientists on animals and dogs. 6 hands on tame animals and machines of all sorts. 7 hands on the arts, and dying and sports. The 8 hands on jokes and poems and plays. The 9 hands on geography and the history of past days. The beats are the biographies of the people we adore. It's my great bow. Hope for 20 more. We go together. You're the song, but we know one yet. You're the word, my glass to the fist. I'll be Jack, you're my Joe, and I'll be there, giving Canada Hill, and the bed, you're the jam. And it's okay to treat me as I am. If we go together, like a horse in the cage, I'm glad he said yes to me in marriage.
Okay, thank you to our open mic readers. Our next three are going to be Sam, Pam, and Yash.
I just had a poem. I didn't have as much time to refine this as I wanted, but I'll read it as it is. It's called Memento Mori. Why think of time as ticking like a clock? Those sharp staccato notes as seconds pass. Presented face that slips by with no thought. To see the hour breathe its very last. It slips between our fingers crashing down. We're watching even as our time runs past. A constant trickle running without sound. To rest inside the waiting hourglass. And whether we are old or young, we die, and think our bitter end to be unjust. If only we could have a bit more time, but death won't wait, it comes for all of us. Remember not to waste the time that's left. Memento Mori, remember death.
Hi. I've written a poem about my brother who, a little more than a year ago, ended up in Logan ER with a hole in his major aortic valve. And once they figured out what it was, they had to life flight him to another hospital that has a cardiac surgeon. And it was pretty scary to see my younger brother in such pain in the ER. They had to rule out so many things beforehand and before they could give him certain medications. So there I was, my mom and I, in the ER room with him, and my brother's just a couple years younger than me. We've been very close our whole life, and he attends the water aerobics class in the morning with me during the summer at the outdoor Logan Aquatic Center. When we don't have a teacher show up, I'm the teacher, and that Wednesday morning, we didn't have a teacher, so I was the teacher. And when I got into the ER room, he and my mom were already there, and he said, "See what happens when you're the teacher?" And I got right in his face and said, "You are not going to blame me, and you are not going to leave me with Mom." I didn't say that version there, but you are not leaving me alone with Mom. You are going to get through this. You are going to do okay. But we didn't know what was going on, and hearing, a tear, a hole in your major aortic valve just sounds like, and it is, it can be life-threatening, and it was very scary to see him put onto the gurney and taken to the helicopter at the helipad at Logan Regional, and I had my phone, I took a couple of pictures, and I ended up getting them enlarged and taking one to the water aerobics class to have everybody sign up for a card. I took the other one to Westside Coffee and had all of our favorite coffee friends and workers at Westside sign it. But at the time I was taking that photo, I wasn't sure if that was the last time I was gonna see my brother. And my emotions were just a whole turmoil of emotions. I was trying to be strong for my mom and my brother. I was trying to understand what the doctors and nurses were saying, and I'm trying to have a lot of trust for the medical profession, wondering if along the way from here to McCady and Ogden or Intermountain Med in Murray. You know, I know it's a shorter flight in a helicopter, but still, anything could happen. And I wanted to pay tribute to my brother because he obviously survived this. And then Halloween morning this year, 14 months later, he had a different medical incident and ended up at the Logan ER also. Pretty scary to end up in the Logan ER on Halloween morning. All the staff are dressed up. And it's just a little surreal, besides the fact that your brother's once again in the ER. But I've written this in a haiku for my brother, and I've titled it Life Flight, Life Fight. My brother's life flight, surreal flight through the night skies. My brother's life fight. One last photo op, sent him with only God's care. Fly with love and hope, trusting medicine, wanting to climb aboard too, hanging on to hope. He wants to blame me, water aerobics teacher. Don't leave me with mom. 1 whole year later, healing, mending, and living. My brother's life fight won. Another few months pass, this time a seizure at home. Heal well, live your life. Being a sister, caring, sharing, and always up. Doing all I can. Supportive always. We have been close all our lives. Sarcastic siblings. Relying on you so we can enjoy geezerhood. You rely on me. Life's roller coaster, ups, downs, wit, wisdom, laugh. One hell of a ride. Thank you.
Hello. So, I'm going to be reading 2 pieces. I'm like 90% sure I've read this first one before, but I wrote it in response to a piece of handkerchief art done by Rosendo Aguilera. It was part of a art exhibit on handkerchief art done by Latinx men in prison. It struck me because seeing this piece of work he did was talking about like his kids and parole coming up, and a few months before it had been Mother's Day and my girlfriend was in prison while her 2 kids were at home. And it's been striking me more because currently one of my other partners is incarcerated and his son's 3rd birthday is coming up. So, yeah. They stare at me, freaky little angels with faces like those porcelain dolls you'd find in a Deseret book or something, spouting the together forever bullshit I've heard a million times from a church podium. You know, the stuff reserved only for those white-skinned, straight, ass-kissing, cross-bearing, poor, unfortunate souls. Not a daddy who's in prison or brown, even if he's Lanqueen or gay or trans or a whore. And what is a together forever promise when you're behind bars till death do you part? His 3 little angels are 3 of 1.3 million children whose dads are behind bars. Visitors since COVID must be shit, staring at daddy in his orange jumpsuit through a distorted camera lens. Does he miss his freaky little angels, miss hugging them, miss seeing them face to face, miss being a part of their everyday while they grow older and further out of his reach? He must draw this, them clutching his parole papers. Though the joy is short-lived, he won't be leaving anytime soon. So, this second piece I was not going to read because I wrote it on Saturday, but then Jan read her piece from Saturday, so I was like, okay, we're reading it. I was gonna work on it for this, but got distracted writing fan fiction, y'all. Was not gonna read that here, even if it's uncensored, it's just not that uncensored. So, I am dismembered, hair braided in copper strands, cut pieces of eternal youth, waiting to be burned, spun into gold, or cast into a hex. I am dismembered, my head rolls off my shoulders, wordless and blind, gouged out eyes, slits down my cheeks like tears I've only fantasized about carving into my face. A brain that thinks but cannot see, cannot hear, cannot scream. I am dismembered, my nose is lost, I do not smell the cat's litter boxes, the mold in the bathroom, the dust in the bedroom. I cannot smell missing pieces of me. I am dismembered, my vulva sits in a museum with a sign that reads prostitute, or porn performer, or transgender man, or simply whore. My uterus is in a lab, dissected and prodded and bleeding for a government keen on knowing its secrets. I am dismembered, eyes kept in a box, peering into black, failing to remember your crooked smile, those almost sapphire eyes. I can't remember the ways you once looked into my eyes. I am dismembered, my legs are still in bed. I wish I could ask you for breakfast, for my cane, for some cuddles, for you to be my legs today. I am dismembered, my breasts are in slits, the heaviness in my chest gone from a beating heart, from my shallow breath, and where you, my two boys, once rested your blonde heads. I am dismembered, my fingers can no longer wrap around your hands, around toddler fingers, can no longer brush your cheek, run through your hair. Instead they lay threaded by knuckles, painted in chipped black polish, with scabs building under their nails. I am dismembered, lips glued to shattered glass that once made up a mirror, missing the feeling of a kiss. Sewn shut when others lie, when secrets tickle my tongue, when I read the comments saying you, my lover, should get the death penalty. I am dismembered, ears buried in the couch cushion of the apartment we no longer live in. I don't even hear your steps, or your breath, or your moans, or your tears anymore. Without a head, I didn't even hear when the police knocked on the door, when you cut your wrists with scissors, and they put pressure to the wound, when a rough week turned into a nightmare. I am dismembered, my hands are tied, hung like Christmas ornaments, like a religious memory of the time they stood on our porch, tossed water to the wind, and asked the gods that you'd let me back in. And you did, when they took your son away. And you sat crying on the phone, restraining order in hand, begging me as you asked if I'd still help you. I am dismembered, my arms fell off that last time you hugged me, when it felt like that first day we met, where you hugged me as if you'd never been hugged and never wanted to let go. My arms bleed and rot wrapped around you still, your shoulders still stained by my tears and the lingering kiss of my lips before I said goodbye and moved the last of my things out. I am dismembered, my feet are frozen on the sidewalk, my toes numb to the cold. I left them behind on the journey from home to homeless to home. They find our home empty, maybe a stranger moved in by now. They wait on the doorstep for you to let them in. I am dismembered, my tongue cut out sits in the garbage. I love yous I threw away last minute. I miss yous crumpled in the trash. I'm sorries, oh so many I'm sorries. I still taste them, like a phantom limb I gave away. I still taste them, metallic and acidic, unintentionally manipulative, but still longing and loving. I am dismembered, my belly is ripped apart, cut jagged like chewed fingernails, insides pouring out, feelings I can no longer hold in, pain I can no longer ignore, maggots eating at my stomach, whispering that you don't love me anymore. I am dismembered, my heart split by each valve. If burned, could it become ashes to bury us now? I stitch it with promises of change, of existing loves. I stitch it with failed new beginnings, when mending us feels like a chance long gone. I am dismembered, bedridden by the pain of a needle through my abdomen as I sew gut feelings into change. I am dismembered, I stitch my tongue into my throat, thread my lips onto my face, but I still struggle to find my voice when your filtered story in the news is met with so much hate. I am dismembered, I stitch my feet to ankles, knees to thighs, thighs to hips, but I barely leave the bed, and walking makes these stitches rip. I wonder how much restitching, how long wounds must heal before I can stand, not just for a walk across the room, but to run with these dismembered legs again. I am dismembered, I stitch my arms back on and tighten the threads holding each finger, but it's hard to hold a pencil or type you a text. I am dismembered, I glued my ears and eyes back on, but now I wake up to silence, an empty bed space, and a house I've never seen, filled with people I've never met. And even with my ears and eyes, I can't recall your face or voice, despite the 14 months it was always so close. I am dismembered, I stitch my breasts up and thread my uterus into my body, each stitch wanting to rip it out, while knowing the police disregard the words of a trans whore. I am dismembered, re-examining every limb, stitching myself back together in hopes you'll love me again. But I am dismembered, and with each stitch I look like less who I was. I can't tell if it's the stitches around my neck or my nose, strands of hair sewn back in, or if when these stitches heal, you'd even recognize me again. Thank you.
All right, looks like we have just one more open mic reader, and that is Tim.
Woody just asked me if I wanted the mic off, and usually I do, especially since I'm going to be confessing to a crime, but the statute of limitations is long up. Patrick, thank you so much for your twink death poem. I too have, believe it or not, turned 30 several times. And then I moved on. If you think 30 is fun, wait till 40, actual death. At that point, you get to make fun of all the people that are going to experience it as moving forward. I know who you are. Anyway. I've always found it kind of interesting how, on occasion, Helicon West will, quite by accident, adopt a theme. And tonight's theme was unquestionably coming of age. I've read this before, but I was on the phone with a friend of mine who's in his mid-40s now, and he was complaining that he was having trouble seeing, and he wondered what was going on. I said, sweetie, you're old. That's what's going on. It happens to everybody. And because of that, I decided to read this one. So here we go. I'm calling it Time Warp. It was the 80s. Ronald Reagan was president, Karate Kid and Aliens were in theaters, and I visited my first gay bar, the Sun Tavern in Salt Lake City. I was only 16, but my driver's license said I was 28. I'd grown tired of feeling like an outsider, even among groups of friends, and longed for a different kind of social connection. I needed to be with people like myself. I had no real interest in drinking. Still, I reasoned if I were going to sneak into a bar, I should probably drink. If only to avoid standing out. The trouble was I didn't like the taste of alcohol, and thanks to an adventurous group of friends, I tried quite a bit. Wine, whiskey, vodka, gin, and most disgusting of all, beer. In the immortal words of Mae West, pour it back in the horse. Alas, in spite of the occasional foray into the world of alcohol, I had yet to find anything I could stomach in any quantity. That was problem number 2. Problem number 1 was my age, and pursuant to which, a fake ID. Given my aversion to all things alcoholic, I never needed one before. I didn't need one for the baths. People like me were good for business after all. And more often than not, they just buzzed me in for free. That way, in case of a raid, if there was no official indication I was there, and they could always claim I snuck in. Satisfying as the baths were, however, I longed for a more social connection. But back to the ID. This was long before the days of magnetic strips and Photoshop. Back then, if you were young and you wanted to drink, even quasi-legally, one had to rely on all the skills taught in arts and crafts. I earned straight C's in arts and crafts. And it took but a glance at the finished product to see that my teachers had been generous. The product in question being a carefully constructed hodgepodge of numbers, letters from my brother's swiped license. Sorry, bro, but this was important. And a candid shot of me looking back toward the camera in my high school yearbook photo. Literally the only color photo acceptable that I could find. Had a badly drawn mustache for age, and I was set. And yes, I thought about just using his license, but my brother and I didn't have a lot in common. He's much taller than I, and darker, swarthy even, and to my great shame, a lifelong Republican. Last but not least, put a mustache on him, and he looked like a young Joseph Stalin. I, on the other hand, was skinny, rosy-cheeked ginger, 11 years his junior, with feathered, wavy dew and no facial hair whatsoever. My newly manufactured ID re-laminated and hand-cut, stowed safely in my front pocket, I set forth in a car full of camping gear, for that was my excuse to leave for the night, on a 2-hour drive to my destiny. The sun, like most bars at the time, was literally and figuratively on the wrong side of the tracks. Not so far west as to be among the decent, albeit poor residents of the Salt Lake Valley, but well out of sight and therefore out of mind of the decent people to the east. The area looked like Murder Central, but the building itself, nondescript though it appeared from the outside, felt inviting enough. Even so, my pulse quickened as I approached. What if someone tried to pick me up? Worse, what if they didn't? I felt certain my ID would not stand up to close inspection. Would they even let me in? Would they call the police? The entrance, oddly enough, was on the southeast corner of the building rather than the street center. I entered a hallway at the end of which was blocked by a rather sturdy-looking doorman who met my gaze almost immediately. Confidence, I reminded myself. Act like you belong. ID, please. His voice was warm and friendly. He gave my ID an uncomfortably long inspection before turning it over. Idaho, huh? I nodded. No mustache today, I see. He said. I shook my head and gulped. Shaved it was all I could manage. He smiled. Looks nice. I yearned to bask in the glow of that compliment a bit longer, but there were other customers in line behind, and the bartender was already looking suspiciously my way. Time for subterfuge protocol number 2. Act like you belong. I bounced right up to the bar, having recently tried something I didn't exactly like but knew I could keep down. Wine cooler, please. Wine cooler, the bartender intoned with derision. We don't serve wine coolers. But he shook his head. Why don't you just have a beer? But I don't like beer. He sneered. Not even root beer? I was vacillating between the desire to run and shrivel up and die when he'll have a fuzzy navel, announced a lilting baritone from a stool next to me. In a couple of years, maybe. My rescuer dismissed the surly bartender with a mere flick of his wrist. On me, he said, and hold the attitude. Now go, shoot, he said, dismissing the bartender with his hand. The bartender made the drink without further comment, poured it into a tall, curvy glass, stuck in a bendy straw and a paper umbrella, and handed it up to me. I didn't realize it at the time, but everyone, including the bartender, was probably staring at me. The Sun was sort of an everyman bar, where guys in everything from business attire to variations of t-shirts and work boots danced and drank beer from long necks and checked each other out, while I pranced around looking like the underage offspring of 21 Jump Street and Miami Vice. Still, everything felt casual. Sun was a friendly neighborhood sort of establishment where everyone was just there to relax and have a good time. Before long, I felt comfortable enough to be myself. I learned later that, as with my forays into the bath, often enough they just buzzed me in regardless of ID. People like me were good for business after all, making a place seem trendy and cool, the kind of place worthy of sneaking into. I was only there a couple of hours, chatting, dancing, singing, sipping what appeared to be a large glass of orange juice. and trying hard to look like I belonged. The great part is, though, I did. After everything, I belong. Thank you.
All right, that was everyone we had on the list. So that will conclude our program this evening. Please make sure to come to our next event. That's going to be on December 11th, I believe. And that will be our celebration of our 20th anniversary of Helicon West. Pretty crazy. So don't miss it. But thank you so much for coming. If you wouldn't mind putting at least the chair you're using away before you leave, that would be great. Yes?
I'm sorry, did you say it was open mic? Is it like a certain theme or just?
Just whatever you got. Thank you so much, everyone.